So we're about to start, and I say everyone have a really relaxed time. This is our Christmas meeting. What you're about to hear are from some of the best experts on balance. And do feel free to ask those questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and you might be thinking of asking it. I assure you, many others will have a very, very similar question to yourself. So I think, Rupal, we're ready to commence. If you would like to put the first question to the panel, please.
Okay. Well, given the stress that comes with preparing for any occasion, especially Christmas and New Year's Eve, what does the panel recommend to help each of us cope with this added stress on top of the stress from our condition? If you could give us lots of ideas and options to try, that would be fantastic. Shall we start off this question to Hannah?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thanks, Rachel. And hello, everyone. You all look amazing. I've got a bit of sparkly cardigan, which was as much as I could muster. Um, yeah, it's a really important one, isn't it? Because Christmas and the holidays, I think it's one of those things where it's supposed to be a really, really happy time, and that in itself can kind of create a bit of stress and pressure for anyone, can't it? But then you've got the added pressure of possibly being around family and the added pressure of being around family who maybe also don't understand your condition particularly. And I guess I'm not sure exactly what stress the person who asked this question had in mind, whether it was kind of general stress, the stress of being around family, the stress of managing your condition, the stress of kind of presence and finances and managing those expectations, or it may be kind of all of the above. So it's kind of tricky to give specific advice without knowing exactly this person finds the most stressful, but I can kind of try and answer more generally. So I guess the first thing I would say is maybe to try and separate out what you can control from what you can't control. So I think we can get quite overwhelmed at Christmas time with other people's expectations of us. There's so many expectations placed on us to kind of visit family and eat other people's food and that kind of thing. And if we can sort of focus on what's within our control, for example, how can we raise our migraine or vestibular migraine threshold if you have vestibular migraine, or you might use a kind of different metric if you have a different condition. But how can you kind of increase your capacity mentally, emotionally, physically over that holiday period? So, from a psychological perspective, sorry, I'm just hearing a bit of feedback. I don't know if that's me or if that's coming
I
from
think
somebody
there are
else.
people still who haven't muted. If you
Ah,
can,
okay.
please put yourself on mute. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so I think if you can, as I say, kind of focus on what you can control and think a little bit from a psychological perspective about sort of regulating your emotional well-being and your nervous system, that will likely have an impact on your physical health as well. So some of the things that you can do include kind of breathing exercises, some of the things we talked about last time, like mindfulness and practicing self-compassion, which sound quite easy to do, but are actually quite difficult in practice. I would say the second thing is kind of linked to self-compassion more specifically, which is how can you sort of lower some of your own expectations of yourself over Christmas and the holiday period. So, a lot of those pressures do come externally, and a lot of them we kind of internalize and then place on ourselves. So, for example, we might say, oh, I can't bring, store-bought food because I have to cook everything from scratch, or everyone will be disappointed with me, or I can't order that toy online. I have to go to the toy shop in person, otherwise I'll be a really bad godparent. So it's just noticing where those kind of like musts and shoulds and always and those kind of really strong expectations come in for ourselves, and thinking actually, how can you cut yourself some slack, give yourself a bit of a break, and how can you kind of let yourself be good enough rather than perfect? So maybe that's kind of bringing some store-bought food instead of cooking everything from scratch, or maybe it's ordering some things online or asking for help, that kind of thing. Um, the third thing I would say is maybe actually reflecting on what you want out of the holiday period. I think we get so dictated by what everybody else wants from us that we don't kind of stop to think what do I want out of this? Do I want some restful time? Do I want some gentle walks in nature? Do I want some time to read or listen to audiobooks or crochet or whatever it is that kind of connects you to your value system? And actually thinking, how can you carve out some of that time for yourself? So I think sometimes when we go into that sort of fight or flight state, we're thinking about how to manage the stress, and we forget to think, how can I actually make this sort of enjoyable for myself as well? And I guess the final thought I had was just to maybe find some allies if you can, and be specific about how they can support you and how you ask them to support you. So, maybe your sister is really bad at kind of deep emotional conversations, but maybe she's really good at doling out ibuprofen if you've got a migraine, for example. Maybe your partner is really good at covering for you and having your back if you need to leave dinner and go and have a lie down. Or maybe it's someone who's not in person. Maybe you have a friend who's a vestibular pal who you can kind of WhatsApp or send a voice note to and kind of vent to about how stressful everything is. So it's figuring out who can you get support from and how can you make the best use out of that support system as well.
And some great
So,
advice there,
yeah.
Hannah. Michaela, is there anything you'd like to add?
Forgot to take myself off mute then. Really, it's kind of, you don't have to do everything. We get very focused on this is how we've done Christmas every single year, and therefore it must be the same again this year. It doesn't need to be. Focus on what you can do, leave off the things that you can't do, and pace yourself. It's so important to give your brain and your body that break from getting overstimulated. What you don't want to be doing is going, right, I'll just keep going and going and going and going and going until your balance hits that point where you're just thinking, I feel so bad, I can't cope anymore. Participate in some of the activities that you feel able to, and then have a little break somewhere, bit of quiet time, and then go back and do something else. It doesn't all have to be done all the time. And if needs be, and those of you that see me know that I'm very much we don't want to be taking vestibular suppressants because we would need to stimulate the balance system to improve it, but they have their place. I do not have any issue whatsoever with someone taking some travel sickness tablets because they need to go and visit their family on Christmas Day, and that will tide them through on that one day.
Brilliant. Peter.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice, isn't it? I mean, I think that being open about it is a good thing, and we would say the same to our patients with hearing loss. Don't suffer. Say, sorry, I am hard of hearing and I'm struggling to hear, and just be open before the day starts and say, I have a balance condition. It's not pleasant. I'm really looking forward to being with you, but I might not manage the whole afternoon, and please forgive me if I have to take a bit of time out to go and sit in a quiet room or get some fresh air. I think that's a good thing to do. I think Michaela's advice regarding medication is a really sound one. You can take something as simple as might relief, maybe some codeine and paracetamol or something, just to suppress headaches and symptoms for that day without sending yourself to sleep. And also, and this is where everyone always goes off me in consultations, just reflect on the underlying nature of your condition. So remember, 4 out of 10 of my patients in the Balance Clinic, and quite probably more than 4 out of 10 of you, have got migraine as part of your balance disorder. And don't forget those migraine triggers, because if you're really sick every Christmas, it's not necessarily the stress of Christmas and your relatives. It's probably that red wine, that caffeine, that chocolate that's triggering it. And actually reflecting on what you've eaten, it lets you become empowered with your condition. So go easy on the overindulgence, get some sleep before, don't get up too early, get fresh air, have walks. At Christmas, we often just confine ourselves to the house, unbelievably unhealthy, and makes you feel really rotten. So it's respecting your body and looking after your body and accepting you've got a condition and letting everyone know you have as well.
Some great advice. You forgot the cheese there, Peter, but
That's
yeah.
my one Christmas gift. You're so right.
Indulgence.
And sadly, thank you. Yeah, sadly, the more expensive the cheese, the more expensive the wine, and the more expensive the chocolate, the worse it is for you, probably.
Brilliant. Look, thank you for that. I'm gonna move on to the next question, and they're all related to, in some respects, the festive season. Are there any physical exercises that may help us before, during, or after the big days that may help many of us with keeping better balance or feeling less tired when you're trying to fight off our balance? Michaela, if I can start with you, I think you've all alluded to it in some respects with getting some fresh air, maybe going out for a walk, Michaela.
The most important thing is getting out for a walk. The best thing that you can do for anything, even if it's just a step out the back door and just have a little potter in the back garden, or out the front door, just a short way up the road and back again. If you can get further than that, fantastic. And if you can get somewhere where you've got trees and grass and natural habitat, even better. But a short walk on a regular basis, absolutely the best thing that you can do.
Are there any vestibular exercises that we should be doing at this time as well? No? Doing the usual?
You know, the thumb exercise, your VOR. There's not going to be a quick fix. There's not going to be something that you suddenly get to the day and go, oh, if I just do this, this is going to sort me for that one day. The vestibular system takes a long time to recompensate. But just keeping as active as you're able in whatever way you can manage is going to help.
Okay.
And if you're out to do that, fantastic.
Hannah?
Yeah, I guess just kind of emphasizing the link between mind and body. And if you're at my kind of presentation, I spoke about how we can have this cascade of sort of stress hormones that maybe triggers the vestibular system. You've probably heard it loads of times, and some of you might be bored of it, and some of you might not have heard of it, but just really simply, when we get into a state where we're panicking, and if you go back to my last presentation, it's completely normal and understandable to experience anxiety. When you have a vestibular episode, I experience anxiety when I'm off balance, and I'm a psychologist, so I just really want to normalize that and validate that. But the more that you can do to kind of keep your system sort of regulated and balanced and calm, the better it will be. So a really simple exercise is just called kind of box breathing. And how you can do that is just kind of breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4, and breathing out for 6. It's recommended that you kind of breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and that you try and breathe in through your belly rather than through your chest. And if you do that for kind of 5-10 minutes every day, that will really set you up well for the day. You can find some really simple YouTube videos that guide you through that really nicely. That's not directly impacting the vestibular system, but it's sort of impacting your nervous system, and potentially your vagus nerve may have an indirect impact. We don't have strong enough research on that to kind of recommend it from a medical perspective, but from a psychological perspective, it can help keep you just calmer and regulated, which can kind of stop that vicious cycle of panic, the dizzy, anxious, dizzy cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating actually to know that I went to the breathing clinic or whatever it's called, and it's really interesting that a lot of us just don't know how to breathe properly.
Absolutely.
And it makes an incredible difference.
Yes, 100%. And it's a signal to your body to say, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm calm. And we don't even realize that when we're panicking in the middle of a vestibular episode, our breathing goes really erratic. We breathe from our chest. So by kind of doing that in the backwards order and breathing from our belly really slowly, we kind of signal to our body, it's okay, I'm safe, even though I don't feel safe. So that's a really helpful way to just kind of ground yourself.
Peter, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think Michaela and Hannah described it beautifully. I think the breathing issue is important. We would say that about 1 in 5 of our patients in the balance clinic have dizziness partly induced by breathing. And just to reflect on it, if you think back to your school days, and you remember hyperventilating at school till you were dizzy and nearly passed out. So we know that it happens. And if you want the technical reason for it, it's because when you hyperventilate, you blow off the carbon dioxide, from your blood, you change the acidity of the blood, calcium comes out, and then that causes dizziness in the brain. So it actually causes a physical structural change by hyperventilating. And as Rupal says, in our spin doctors, which is this sort of group of like-minded specialists who get together to discuss in Leicester how to look after our balanced patients, respiratory physiotherapists, breathing physiotherapists are part of our group, so we really recognise that. And just to emphasise or reiterate what both Michaela and Hannah have said, exercise is really important. If you sit at home all day, particularly overindulging over the Christmas period, irrespective of whether you've got a balance disorder or not, you'll feel really rotten. And if you've got a balance disorder, and if you've got migraine, and if you've got PPPD, you're going to feel super rotten. So absolutely do your best to get out and not overindulge.
Yeah. Rosie's just put on the screen, I can't believe we used to actually make ourselves dizzy for fun as children. Hannah has actually put some links in, links on the chat if you want to have a look at those later. 2 videos to guide you through the belly breathing and box breathing that she mentioned. Peter, I want to come back to you with another question. Some members have a very large and noisy sort of gathering at these festive periods. Does the panel have any advice on how to survive the mayhem, the noise and partying without appearing to be party poopers or miserable people, please? I know you've kind of all touched on it so far, but Peter?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say, except you're not a party pooper or a miserable person, you're someone with an illness, and you've got a problem. You're visually oversensitive, and if you can stay on, I hope everyone can stay on to the second half. I've got some what I think are absolutely incredible bits of research and videos for you, which I hope you'll really enjoy, which you'll understand and hopefully help you understand why this setting causes you distress as an individual with a balance disorder. In a way, it validates the sensation that you have. And I think that what we're reiterating here is don't suffer in silence. Tell your family and friends, I have a balance disorder, I'm being treated for it. Visual and auditory stimulation, sound and light, make my disorder worse. I want to throw myself in and really enjoy myself with you because I love your company. But look, some of it might be too much, and please forgive me if I have to step out a bit. And just be honest with yourself and honest with others.
Yeah, I think you've kind of touched on, sort of answered the next question as well, related to the question that I've just asked. Somebody's saying that they can't sit through an entire Christmas day as other family members do. It's exhausting.
Well, hang on. I'm gonna interrupt there, Rupal.
Okay.
And just a show of hands. Who feels comfortable sitting through an entire family day without getting up on Christmas Day? I'm going to scan through here. And I'm not putting my hand up here. I can't see anyone else putting your hands up either. I'm going through. There's 2 of you. I'm impressed. Polly and Sandy can stand the whole day of Christmas with the family. Very impressed, both of you. Well done, you. So what I'm trying to say, and I think Glenda may have had a hand up. I'm not sure. What I'm trying to say is that for everyone, particularly if you live a relatively quiet life. It's actually overwhelming to have a large number of people around you. And, I'm used as a very, very busy doctor who works 90 hours a week and has people coming at me solidly. I'm the same at home. I want a bit of me time and a bit of downtime and a bit of space. And my family respect that and I respect theirs. And there's there's nothing wrong with that. But if you've got a vestibular disorder as well, it's just much more difficult. And if you've got migraine, it's just much more difficult. And accept it.
Yeah. And it relates to the next question about, how you tell people, Hannah, that you need those breaks, you need some time out without people being offended or, people understanding what the situation is. How do you do that?
Well, Ripple, I think this is the $1,000,000 question, and I'm not sure there is an easy answer to it. I mean, Peter has kind of modeled really well how to do that in a sort of non-defensive way. The reality is that we all have complex family dynamics, and I think we all carry a lot of kind of pain and hurt, maybe from times when we've been misunderstood or invalidated. I've certainly had more than a couple of spats or arguments with my family where I've said I need to actually blow those candles out, and I've had a really passive aggressive comment back, and it's really hurt my feelings. So actually, I guess we can talk all day about what you can do and what you can say. I think it's maybe sometimes more important to think about how do you manage it when it goes a bit wrong and you feel really triggered, maybe when family roll their eyes at you or seem to make an insinuation that you're being a bit difficult or you're being a bit introverted. And sometimes we maybe interpret that a certain way, but we're not here to kind of gaslight ourselves. Sometimes that's real. People really don't understand and can be really invalidating and really insensitive. So I think first of all, coming back to compassion for me, for you, for all of us, it's really important to name that navigating an invisible condition that people don't understand is incredibly difficult and it can be triggering. And it's not only you that finds this difficult. So I just want to name that. What I would suggest is if you can find the courage, it's harder to do in the short term, but it's more effective in the long term if you can approach this before Christmas Day, before the heat of the moment. Because if you try and do it in the heat of the moment, there's so much going on for everyone and things can kind of get at cross purposes and be misunderstood. We kind of call this in family therapy strike while the iron is cold rather than strike while the iron is hot. So if you can actually approach someone in advance. And the other thing to think about is kind of your posture, your tone, your body language, how you approach that with somebody. So Peter modeled that really well. I guess also thinking, let's put ourselves in that person's shoes, that person who I have to approach to advocate for myself. What are their values? What do I need to name to make them feel valued? So if it's my sister-in-law and she's hosting and she kind of feels valued by feeding people, maybe I'll start by saying, hey, I can't wait to eat your amazing, famous, mince pies. I'm so looking forward to playing Articulate with you. I just really need to have a conversation with you about some of my health needs, if that's okay. So it's kind of starting by maybe making them feel valued, making a connection with them, and then opening it up and naming what you need. You might want to kind of make a list of the biggest needs that you have. So maybe it's that I can't really struggle with tolerating candles, for example. On the dinner table, they flicker and they just really trigger my visual vertigo. That might be something for you that family find really difficult. They've just, put a big place setting out. They feel really offended. Or it may be that you need to take lots and lots of breaks more than other people. And people go, where have they gone? I've just put out this big dinner and they're going to get really offended by that. So make a list of your priorities. And I would say pick your battles, stick to the most important ones and the priorities. And try and approach that like Peter said, not making a big deal of it, but here to just name, these are my needs. This is what I, need from you. I'd be really grateful if you could accommodate me. I really appreciate your understanding. And outside of that, I would say kind of let go of what you can't control, which is other people's reactions. And if you feel angry at their reactions, if you feel hurt by their reactions, that's completely human. And give yourself some compassion for that because it's understandable. So sorry if that was a bit long-winded.
There's some great advice there. Michaela, is there anything you want to add?
I think I would just add that often when I'm talking to people, a lot of people tell me that they do things that they feel that they should do, and their expectations of themselves are far, far greater than their expectations of everybody else. So being able to take that moment to say, if my husband, my child, my sister, mother, whoever you love that's close to you was experiencing what I'm experiencing, would I expect them to do what I'm expecting to do of myself? And if the answer is no, then maybe it's unfair to be expecting that of yourself as well. And actually treat yourself in the same way, with that same kindness that you would with your mum, your husband, your child, that best friend that does everything just right. Treat yourself with that same kindness.
Can I just ask a question? There were beautiful answers, both Michaela and Hannah. Hannah, can you clear up something I've never understood? What does gaslighting mean?
It means sort of telling somebody that it's all in your head. You're kind of imagining things, and your feelings and experiences are sort of not valid, and your perception is not real. So for example, if I say to somebody, you know, you've really hurt me, you really invalidated me there, and they say, no, I didn't, that's really kind of directly contradicting somebody on their experience, and it can leave someone feeling really invalidated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
No, it's a term I've heard, and I feel very past it, not knowing quite what it means.
Yeah, it's quite maybe it's a Gen Z form of lingo that I've adopted.
Thank you for clarifying.
There's so much to learn, Peter, these days,
You're
honestly. It's
so
trying to keep
right.
up. All right, I've got a question for you, Peter. Somebody who's very sensitive to visual preference. So many things trigger feelings of slight nausea with children running around, televisions, you know, general busy rooms. Is there any non-prescription or prescription medication this person can take, particularly for the day, to reduce sensitivity without putting them to sleep? For example, travel sickness tablets.
I think that's really difficult, isn't it? I don't have an easy answer to that. I suppose the slightly longer answers. So some patients whose visual sensitivity is primarily migraine derived often have filters on their glasses to have slightly darker glasses, and light filters and glasses are issues that, you know, we could discuss separately. Others may have more expertise than me on that. If the visual sensitivity, which we're going to look at in a little bit more detail in the second half, just briefly, but I think really interestingly, it is derived perhaps from triple PD, persistent postural perceptual dizziness. Again, I don't have a short-term solution, but the three main legs of treatment are those of vestibular physiotherapy, which is going to take many months, cognitive behavioral therapy, which again is going to take many months, and medication can be incredibly helpful for that. So SNRIs and SSRIs, although these are powerful antidepressants, we're not using them as antidepressants, we're using them as drugs to down regulate that hypervigilance, that hypersensitivity in the brain that leads to those stimuli. So I think the answer, I'm afraid, is I don't have an easy short-term solution for that. The only ways that you can sort of help improve yourself is to get your body in its best condition. And it's simple advice, but make sure you've had a good night's sleep, make sure you've had a bit of exercise, make sure you haven't overindulged, make sure you've had plenty of water rather than caffeine, and try and avoid the orange juice, which might trigger migraines, and all the other food stuffs we've talked about: red wine, chocolate, cheese, Chinese food, and so on. I'm afraid I don't have an easy answer. If Michaela and Hannah do, wonderful. I'd love to hear it.
Have you, either of you, Michaela, Hannah?
No quick immediate answer. There's obviously, you can get various travel sickness tablets from the pharmacist and have a chat to the local pharmacist with regards to that, if that's an option you're choosing. But it's just a case of preparation. So don't go thinking, right, I need to visit this family member and then get straight in the car and then dash off to visit this family member, and lots of travel and just everything being really hectic. Just really pace yourself and give your brain and your body that space to recover in between. It will cope much better if it has that chance to recover in between, rather than just keeping going. And things like getting a good night's sleep, sometimes easier said than done, but being aware, if you are really tired, that things will be that bit more of a struggle. But there's, with anything, unfortunately, with balance, as we're all aware, there's no quick fix.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move on to the next question. And Michaela, this one's for you. I've watched Michaela's presentations in the past. They're excellent. Would she recommend any form of pre-Christmas self-meditation or even hypnotherapy that could prepare me more for the pressures and stresses of Christmas?
Finding whatever mindful practice works for you. So for some people, finding the right breathing techniques, and there's a whole variety of different ones, and Hannah's very helpfully shared a couple of them. Some people enjoy just stick their headphones in and just listen to a certain piece of music that just helps the mind just drift away to somewhere else for 5 minutes. Some people, the colouring books maybe, all sorts of different things count as mindful practice. It's finding that thing that just lets your brain tune out from things that's going on around you, tunes out from well, I've got to go and do this and I've got to do that, and whilst I'm at it, I also need to go and do that. Your brain just needs a bit of space. So whatever works for you.
Hannah, is there anything... Sorry. Hannah,
Yeah,
anything to
I mean, I agree with that. I can put a couple of guided compassion focused meditations in the chat because I guess I was picking up on the word pressures there. And I suppose when I hear the word pressure, that's usually external, and there's a component internally maybe where we're being quite critical of ourselves, or we're quite worried about living up to expectations. So just bringing a bit of compassionate touch, compassionate imagery, compassionate thinking can be really helpful. And one way is through kind of guided, uh, loving kindness meditations. I can put a couple in the chat. The other is kind of what Michaela was talking about, which is a bit more individual and thinking about your own sort of compassionate touchstones. So, like Michaela just mentioned, music. For me, it's kind of maybe listening to classical music or getting out into nature or spending time with my dog. For somebody else, it might be something completely different. It's around what kind of grounds you and gets you back into a space where you feel you can access that bit of self-kindness and self-compassion.
Thank you. Peter, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, sorry, I was typing a message there. Can you just
No
repeat
problem.
the question? What was the question, sir? Rupal, you've gone offline. I can't hear you now.
You're muted, Rupal.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand what happened there. Hopefully,
Oh
you can hear
no,
me
I can hear you now. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. All right. It was to do with recommending any sort of self meditation or hypnotherapy that could prepare people.
I'll leave that to Michaela.
But I've got the
Absolutely.
next question is for you, Peter, and it's from Kate. And Kate says, recently I woke up in the night turning to my left side and the room was spinning. I've had this a few times over the years, and I've had one session having the Epley movement as all was well. But this time I've had 7 sessions with the therapist. Every second day it's slightly better, but waking up in the night, I still feel unstable. And in the morning, I'm wondering if there may be another problem.
Yeah,
I hope I read that out clearly.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's one of the commonest that we get asked. So, with a very high degree of likelihood, what you're describing is BPPV, benign positional paroxysmal vertigo. And if I just stick with that first, and then come back to the question of a second condition. So, following Epley manoeuvres, we would expect 8 out of 10 of our patients to get better after a single treatment, and 9 out of 10 of our patients to be better after 2 sessions. Now, about 1 in 10 people have challenging BPPV and can take quite a number of sessions to get better. And that can sometimes be because we can't get the crystals out because they're stuck, or there's just a few of them in there, or sometimes perhaps because we've got them out, but they fall back in. So what can you do? Well, my techniques are maybe a little bit more aggressive, if you like, than the standard Epley maneuver technique if it doesn't work. So I give head shakes, I do Seamont maneuvers, which are head slams and not quite that vicious, but fairly rapid movements. And they have very high success rates in getting my patients' BPPV better. We still do have 1 or 2 people who don't get better. And this is absolutely not a comment for you. It's just an open comment, that about 1 in 200 of my patients I can't get better eventually from BPPV. And there is a surgical solution for it, which involves drilling under the brain, behind the ear, and actually putting a graft into the channel where those crystals are moving. So this is a real physical thing. So the answer to your question is, if I don't know who's doing your Epleys for you, but there may be others out there who can do Seamont maneuvers and more rapid maneuvers to get you better. That's number 1. Number 2, if most of the crystals have been removed and you've only got mild residual dizziness, actually doing the Brandt-Daroff exercises can be very helpful. And these are the ones where you turn your head one side, lie over on that, turn your head the other side, and then lie on the other side. And you do it 3 or 4 times each way, 2 or 3 times a day. And Brandt, Brandt, Daroff, Daroff, Brandt-Daroff exercises are on the internet, and you can follow those. But I strongly recommend you do Brandt-Daroff exercises or home Epley maneuvers at the outset of a condition without someone having formally diagnosed you with BPPV, because there are many other conditions, some which are less nice to have, if you like, or more dangerous to have, that can mimic the symptoms of BPPV. So I've always been really uncomfortable with that. Make sure you get yourself properly diagnosed first off. So the first thing, therefore, is get someone who can give you a really good Epley maneuver. Number 2 is prop yourself up in bed. So use some extra pillows, because the canal that the crystals are in is almost in the posterior canal. And if you lie backwards, the crystals fall back into the posterior canal. But if you sit up, the crystals tend to dump out. So that the further up you can sit, the more the crystals will roll out and the less likely they are to roll back in. So we recommend either 4 pillows at night or sleeping in an armchair for a few days. Thirdly, avoid things that might trigger crystals. So that's reaching up to a top shelf, putting washing out, bending under a cupboard, lying on your back, doing your yoga, in your pool, doing your backstroke, whatever it is. Keep your head propped up. Doesn't matter whether your eyes or where your eyes or your body are in space. You want your head propped up. That's the next one. The next thing that's really helpful for recurrent BPPV, which it sounds like you have, is vitamin D. And this is becoming much more apparent. And I've given this group, a talk on this once or twice before. And very, very approximately, if we take vitamin D, 2,000 international units daily, we can very roughly half the recurrence rate of BPPV. It's not quite that, but it looks like it's being something very helpful. And BPPV, interestingly, is commoner in the winter because vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin. And so we need 15 minutes of sun on our arms and face. So Kevin clearly will not be getting BPPV at the moment, lucky thing, whereas all of us over here are at significant risk. And it costs £3 or £4 a month. Just get it from a health food shop. You don't need a prescription for it. So that you don't, and I wouldn't bother getting your vitamin D measured either. If you are very fatigued, tired, particularly if you've got darker skin, you might want to get your vitamin D measured. And if you've got severely low vitamin D levels, then infusions can actually really give you a bit of vavavoom. And there's a fair number of the population who have very significant vitamin D levels very low. So those are the measures to help your short-term BPPV. Now, your second question was, might it be associated with a different condition? The answer is yes. So about half of my patients with BPPV, I treat the BPPV, thanks very much, it's a miracle doctor, bye-bye. That's it, we don't do anything else. But half have something else going on. And that something else might be the thing that's causing the positional dizziness, or it might be an underlying weakness of balance function. So there are a range of common and less common conditions which can cause positional dizziness rolling over in bed, and they really need a medical diagnosis. Things coming from your neck, blood supply problems, migraine, in fact, and a range of other things can do that. And then the secondary issue is it associated with another condition? Because BPPV is very often associated with other balance conditions. 1 in 5 of my patients with Meniere's have BPPV as well, for example. About half of our patients with BPPV have an underlying vestibulopathy. That's weakness of inner ear balance function. And then that's where Michaela comes in to give physiotherapy to help for that. So that's quite a long answer to a deceptively complex question, but I hope it answers your question.
Thank you. I've got another question for you in just a moment's time. Hannah, was there something you were trying to say? No, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to move on to the question, and I don't know whether you've kind of answered this. Nicola wants to ask and says that she's currently having a flare-up of her triple PD, or at least that's what she thinks it is, and wondering if there is any correlation between symptoms and the onset of winter and the cold weather. She said she had a flare-up last year about the same time. I know last year it seemed to be caused by train travel, but this year she's not been anywhere, and the symptoms are quite bad, particularly sort of movement, rocking while not moving, and her whole body feels tense, wobbly, struggling to walk properly. Any advice from the panel or in fact the group as well on this? Peter, should we start with you?
Yeah, so I think that, again, two ways to answer this. The first is to be at face value. It's really important to know there is no association between my last answer and this answer. The second bit is there might be. Okay, so the absolute no. BPPV, benign positional paroxysmal vertigo, are crystals in the inner ear, physical calcium crystals, 6 millionths of a meter across, all beautiful and similar in here. So physical condition, and maybe a bit like osteoporosis of the inner ear. Maybe that's why vitamin D helps. Using our alphabet soup for a different word, PPPD, persistent postural perceptual dizziness, totally different condition, totally unrelated to BPPV. And whereas BPPV is in the ear, 3PD or triple PD is in the brain, and it is a central processing disorder of balance. So the brain is oversensitive to visual, sometimes vestibular and other stimuli. So it's a different condition. it is strongly influenced by how you are generally, your general physical well-being and your mental health well-being. If you are unwell with intercurrent illness or deconditioned, triple PD is going to get worse. So as we come into the winter, this is where maybe there is an association. If you are vitamin D deficient, actually, maybe that will be a contributor to making your triple PD worse. But much more likely, I would have thought, there will be a physical component of deconditioning. We don't go out for walks. We're less happy. We have the winter blues, whatever you want to call it. Also psychologically, for some people, the darker months are more difficult. And I would defer to Hannah and Michaela on describing that contribution. But a really good question as well.
Yeah, my apologies for getting mixed up with all these, letters.
Super.
Triple PD and BPPV. Michaela, let's come to you. Your thoughts?
So just coming on from Peter's thing there, also the other thing to bear in mind potentially is migrainous symptoms with it. Some of us are very sensitive to pressure changes with the weather. We can be very sensitive to the sun being much lower in the sky when we're driving to work, and that can be causing us problems. The general lower light levels giving us slightly reduced visual information, making us a lot more reliant on our vestibular function and our musculoskeletal information, just makes things a little bit more challenging. And as Peter said, the winter months for some people can be more challenging mentally, with leading up to things like Christmas, which for some people is very stressful. A lot more going on. There can be a lot more with the street lights and the Christmas decorations out on the high street. All that twinkling, that's a lot of information for your brain to be trying to process. And if we're slightly sensitive to it already, it will add into it. And then the stress level starts to hike up. And the more stressed we get, the worse we feel. The worse we feel, the more stressed we get. And off it goes. So there's lots and lots of factors that can be contributing to it.
Yeah, I can see Nicola nodding away frantically, and I think a lot of us can relate to it. Hannah, psychologically, how can we deal with this?
I'm actually going to answer in a slightly different way. First of all, I wanted to kind of maybe put down my psychologist hat and just answer from my lived experience perspective first. So bear in mind everything I'm about to say is totally speculative based on my own lived experience and the research I've done. So, take that with a pinch of salt. I would say I always flare up when there's a sharp change in the weather. It's absolutely reliable for me. And that's whether it's hot to cold, cold to hot. When there's a sharp change, I notice a flare up in myself. I don't know why that is, but I think some strong, credible hypotheses have already been named by Peter and Michaela. The general physical wellness and the changes in the seasons, the light changes, absolutely. We've got so much research now on light in the brain, and pressure changes and migraine. We have a lot of research on the impact of heat and barometric pressure, but not the cold weather. But for me, just to echo what Nicola said, I'm getting a lot more rocking. I'm getting a lot of the symptoms she's talking about too. And I would say, personally, I'm in quite a well place psychologically. So the stress isn't contributing for me right now. There's something else going on. But it's probably a range of factors. And I think what's really tricky about that is it feels so out of our control. Throughout the year, everything fluctuates. And I suppose if we think about it, that having these conditions makes us so sensitive to the world around us. It makes us so sensitive to weather changes. It makes us so sensitive to, as Peter says, one of the things is like, it's really cold outside. I'm not going for as many walks as I used to be going to. We're so sensitive to light changes. And that's where the kind of acceptance and compassion-based stuff also comes in alongside the medical, because this is just so hard to live with. I know myself that when I flare up, it never kind of gets completely easy. I never sort of go, oh, great, here's a flare up coming into the winter. I'm welcoming it with open arms. But I'm getting better at going, okay, here it is. How can I adjust to this and kind of not resist it completely? And I think it's harder to get to a place of acceptance when we don't have that understanding. we only have speculation and credible hypotheses until we have good evidence-based research. But just to kind of extend my solidarity and say that I resonate with the experience.
A lot of us do. Kevin's also put in the chat that suffering with sinus issues, as well as many as I perceive to be far worse, noticed to be noticeably more, off balance moments when it's cold. Whatever the cause. He says, I don't like it. I don't think any of us enjoy it at all. We've got a few more questions before we take a break and present you with the Dizzy Awards. So I'm going to crack on. This is Peter, I've got loads of questions coming up for you and Michaela. Could taking omeprazole or any other medication long-term be related to a balance condition? I ask this as I've had 3 brain scans over the last 3 years, which have not changed, but my balance is steadily getting worse. So could there be some other explanation for my deteriorating condition? Incidentally, I did not suffer any problems with balance or associated symptoms until taking omeprazole for over 6 months. It is now 4.5 years later. And this question comes from Tom, Peter.
Okay, Tom, that's a really complex question, but it's a really, really interesting question. And if you can bear with me a few minutes, I'll explain why. So there is a chicken and egg scenario here, in that balance conditions can be related to stress, and acid reflux can be related to stress. So it's possible you took the omeprazole because your body was under stress or your mind was under stress for whatever reason, and that caused your indigestion, hence your omeprazole, and caused your dizziness. But I'm going to put that to one side. We'll just park that concept, because actually you've hit on a very interesting point. And this is relevant for all PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, so omeprazole, lansoprazole, and the whole range of acid inhibitors for people who get reflux disease. Now, PPIs are generally prescribed for 4 to 8 weeks for esophagitis or this heartburn sensation. But a large number of people, a very large number of people in the UK, take anti-acid medicine long term. And if you read some of the sort of daily papers, you'll find lots of potential risks of taking long-term anti-acid medication, and actually they're probably pretty low. However, one of those risks is lack of magnesium absorption. And it's been identified that a number of patients on long-term PPIs, proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole, are magnesium deficient. It's a little difficult analyzing magnesium, because you can have a blood test for it, and if it's low on your blood test, you are low in magnesium. But magnesium is stored in the brain, amongst other places, and you can actually have fairly low brain magnesium, but relatively normal blood magnesium. And this is relevant for 2 reasons. I have had 2 patients in the last 2 months come to me with chronic dizziness, which was really quite difficult to diagnose. And it triggered a lot of concerns in me, in that they both presented with progressive dizziness and imbalance, tingling in their fingers and feet. Now, and just general malaise. And that is a symptom of hypercalcemia, so an abnormal calcium level. And calcium and magnesium are very similar ions. And in fact, both of them were admitted very soon afterwards, and the blood tests showed they had severely low magnesium, and they had magnesium infusions, and they were instantly cured. Now, I do not want to say to everyone here, if you are on anti-acid medicine, you have a low magnesium, because almost certainly you do not. But this is something relatively newly understood, and something I think important. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is magnesium is an increasingly interesting ion. We haven't historically assessed it when we do blood tests. You might get your calcium assessed when you get your liver function done, for example, but magnesium's not on the normal spectrum of compounds analyzed. And there's probably no reason for it to be most of the time. But if we come over to migraine, magnesium is probably a really good treatment for chronic migraine. And before you dive into many of the migraine prophylactic medications, it's probably worth having a magnesium supplement, 400 milligrams twice a day for 3 months. And you can buy that quite cheaply over the counter. And there are some compounds also you can buy which are mixed with vitamin B2, riboflavin, and coenzyme Q10. So that combination is a really good combo that you don't need a prescription for. And there are some bottles you can buy yourself. They're about £40 a month, I think, that have all of them together if you Google them. So there's some nice drug mixtures for that as well. So that's slightly an aside from it. But it is an interesting thing. If you look at any drug side effect, it'll almost certainly say dizziness. That's the first thing. And it's probably not going to be the cause of your dizziness. And omeprazole is probably not going to be the cause of your dizziness. But in a small group of patients who take it for long term, it can cause severe dizziness from low magnesium. So a really interesting question. Thank you for that.
Can I just ask you, just off the back of that, Peter, are there any sort of side effects from taking the doses of magnesium that you're talking about?
Yeah, you get upset tummy. So there are a range of different compounds of magnesium, and some of them are to help your bowels move. And so be careful what you choose. Just you can just do a little Google yourself. You don't need a prescription from your GP for it. Unless, I mean, of course, if you've got other medical issues, you'll need to, particularly if you've got cardiac issues, you definitely need to speak to your GP before you take magnesium, because it is effective on the heart as well. But generally, you can just buy it safely over the counter. And if you Google the different types of magnesium, you'll be able to find the one that suits you best. So if you're particularly constipated, for example, taking one that has a slightly laxative effect might be a helpful thing. But I have to say, I recommend this to very large numbers of patients, and I don't have many reports of people having issues with it.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, which is from Vimla. She says, I'm due to have a stereotactic radiotherapy. I hope that's right. Sometime
Stereotactic,
to stop the meningioma. I can't speak this afternoon.
Stereotactic radiosurgery for posterior fossa meningioma.
Thank you. All right. Hopefully, it will be a one-off treatment. She says, the oncologist has told me about the possible side effects of tiredness and fatigue. My vestibular rehab physiotherapist has warned me that my balance could get worse for a bit until my body adjusts to the radiotherapy treatment. Does the panel have any knowledge of or can comment on this, please? Michaela, can I come to you first?
Yes, certainly the balance might feel a little bit worse for a short time. But again, same as the previous advice, try and keep moving as much as you're able to, even if it's just a little bit, and then gradually build up. Try and go out for little walks as much as possible and as safely as possible. But it will pass and things will improve again. So just try and move your head as much as you can.
That's fair advice. I would probably be a little bit more aggressive than that. In that there is a question. Posterior fossa is the back of the brain, and that contains the cerebellum, which is the balance part of the brain, and it also includes the nerves to the ear. So it slightly depends where your meningioma is. If your meningioma is close to the internal acoustic meatus, and if anyone listening has got an acoustic neuroma, a tumor of the nerve, then that's that area. Then if you have stereotactic radiosurgery there, it will knock off a lot of balance function in the inner ear. So you could be significantly dizzy. But paradoxically, a lot of that balance function would probably already have been knocked off gradually by the tumor. So if that area is hit, it's a bit like having a vestibular neuronitis or a normal, sort of typical attack of the inner ear. And then that would respond really well to vestibular physiotherapy. And in fact, we'd go further than that. We would say not just rehabilitation that Michaela can give you is a good thing to have, but prehabilitation. And that might be a concept that not everyone's familiar with. But if you're going to have something done to your inner ear, like gentamicin for Meniere's, stereotactic radiosurgery, or even surgery for a tumor around the inner ear, rehabilitation, starting the physiotherapy before you have the treatment, is a good thing to do. So I'd say good luck with treatment and really push on with your vestibular physiotherapy before you start it. Second thing is, if the tumor, the meningioma, is not in the ear but is a bit further round on the lining of the brain, because these are usually on the lining of the brain, it may affect the cerebellum, which is the balance part of the brain, and could in theory cause difficulty with coordination That's a little bit more unpredictable how that would work. I would expect you'd have to speak to your treating doctors, because some meningiomas are deeper in the cerebellum and you may get greater side effects from them. But as a general rule, I would hope you would do reasonably well, but you might have to be prepared for poor coordination. And although vestibular physiotherapy might be of some help there, it probably won't be curative. And the neurophysiotherapist might need to give you support there. So slightly nuanced answer, because I don't know the size or location of your meningioma. But I think what would be good in any circumstance will be to start the physiotherapy as soon as you can.
All right. Got a question from Geraldine before we take a break for the Dizzy Awards. And again, this is for Peter and Michaela, both of you. I've noticed whenever I trigger a vertigo balance episode, the worst symptoms appear the following day as soon as I wake up. So severe nausea, migraine, type vertigo, constant imbalance. This happens 80% of the time. Known triggers are specific head movements, spiral staircases, also flu, cold infections, and some medications as well. Why do I get such a delayed onset of symptoms, and why they're not more immediate? Asks Geraldine. Peter.
It's what most people report. And it's essentially a stress reaction in your body. Remember, both psychological and physical stress does the same harm, similar harm to your brain, and it activates the same hormones in your brain as well. So for some people with BPPV, that very straightforward inner ear problem, well, not straightforward, but relatively straightforward to understand, inner ear problem, they'll have an attack of BPPV, but feel wiped out the next day. If you've got migraine, which you're reporting, and if you've got visual preference, which you're reporting, the natural consequences of a migraine are for it to have a hangover effect afterwards. A migraine can affect people from minutes through hours, through days, through weeks, and through months. So these are insults on your brain, and your brain doesn't like it. And it's absolutely normal to be wiped out the day after. It's a very common response, and it's this stress reaction that your body's taking, probably. The other possibility is that it's actually part of the initiating event. So, for example, if you had a BPPV attack or a migraine attack, it's still part of that event that's ongoing.
Michaela?
I think also it's important to take into account that just as the human race, we like to try and keep going. We don't listen to our bodies very much at all. We will start to get symptoms. We think, oh, it's not that, I'll keep going. Or I've still got this to do, so I'll just get that done, and then I'll just get that done. And we keep going and going and going, and we build up that stimulation. And we quite often keep going until the symptoms get to the point of saying, I cannot do anymore. I have got to stop. By which time it's too late to bring that stimulation down particularly rapidly. Again, coming back to that pacing ourselves, that we do a little bit, we start to feel things feel unpleasant, we lead into it, we get that stimulation, but we don't push it too far, and then we give our brain that chance to catch up and relax and not get overstimulated. We want to.
I did mention on the chat earlier, I definitely have more off balance moments when I'm in sustained cold weather. So not for 10 minutes, but if I spend many hours in very cold weather, I perceive that I'm having more problems. And I just wondered, is it possible I know the body tends to shut down the blood flow to save the heat in the core of the body. Is it just me imagining it, or could it affect people with Meniere's?
No and yes is the simple answer. In that your core blood flow will continue. So the blood flow to your brain and your inner ears, and the temperature in your brain and your inner ears will not be changed. If it is, you've got hypothermia and you're about to pop your clogs. Yes. So the temperature of your skin, the blood flow maybe to some of your viscera and your gut and so on may be redirected to your brain in those circumstances. But no, it's not a change in temperature that's causing it, unless you get a blast of cold air if you're out walking, you get a blast of cold air into your ear or cold water in your ear. That could have a caloric effect, a temperature effect, but no, that won't be affecting it. But could you feel worse in weather change? Yeah, for sure. Patients both with migraine and Meniere's are very aware of both pressure change and weather change, and that's well reported. And whether or not that's a pressure change across the eardrum, we're not sure. Some patients with Meniere's disease do really well with grommets, and we don't quite, absolutely, we don't quite understand why. We think there might be some pressure receptors on the margins of the inner ear that might be relevant to. Again, we're not sure. And maybe it comes full cycle back to those earlier questions about our bodies and stress. And all balance disorders are made made worse by physiological stress. Our body's been unwell, and psychological stress. And the winter months are more stressful on our bodies, so it's difficult to know. So I don't think it's a major internal disruption. I think it's a consequence either of pressure change or of bodily stress.
Okay, lovely. It's still my reason I try and get away from the UK in the winter as much as I can. Right, I apologies. I'm working off a laptop today, so I'm going to try now to share screen with you for the Dizzy Awards. For those of you new to Life on the Level, the Dizzies are these much coveted awards, and it's kind of our way of celebrating when people do great things for the group, for members, or for the balance community as a whole. As far as we know, no one else does this anywhere in the world, and I can tell you they are rarer than the Oscars. So I'm going to dive in now and try and share screen, and there's 5 or 6 categories. There is a judging panel of 5 of us who run through nominations and who we think deserves the awards. There are 3 categories which are nominated by the members as well. So I will now try and share screen. And Rupal, is anything coming through at the moment?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
That's good. I shall try now. And is that working for you?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, you can see the large screen. That's good. So I will now try and work my way through it. Welcome to the Dizzies. The first section we like to go to is all about clinicians, those experts that come into contact with the group, and it really is difficult to do this because, as you're seeing today with the 3 panelists, everyone gives so much, and they're giving their own time, they're sharing their knowledge, their wisdom, their experience with us. So it really, really is difficult to pick out those that have done something new or something outstanding. But we have to do this, we have to try. So it's with great pleasure that I announce the first Dizzy this year goes to someone who's with us at the moment. If I can get my screen to change. And it's Hannah Ryan, Dr. Hannah Ryan, which I'll try and bring you in on the screen at the moment. It's rather difficult with, there we go, I'll try and bring you in. And why the award for Hannah? We felt the presentation she gave recently, only a couple of months ago, it was superb. It was aimed predominantly at explaining how we could be kind to ourselves, how we needed to not beat ourselves up, not be too hard on ourselves when we were suffering with so many challenges, so many physical challenges and psychological ones. But the amazing thing about Anna's presentation was how she shared her own personal journey with us, and talked us through the many challenges she had herself. A lot of this to do with life in general, but then with her career and how she fought through to do what she does now, the qualifications, and doing such a great job. There were so many members were moved by this. We had a record number of emails coming in after the presentation that just spoke of how well this had resonated with them. And we've added here to the slide, I don't know if you can read it or not, from one member, Hannah was able to convey how we can learn to adapt our lives in order to accommodate a balanced disorder. This is such a vital skill which enables us to continue to see ourselves as functioning people rather than simply defining ourselves by our illness. And Dr. Ryan was highly inspirational. So thank you very much, Anna, for what you've done, and congratulations on winning the Dizzy. This will find its way to you in the post sometime around Christmas. But I don't know if you want to say just a few words, if you want to unmute. Thank you.
I mean, I feel equally absolutely mortified and equally really, really moved and really touched. I'm so grateful. I think that's just so kind and gracious. I think it says much more about you all than it does about me. It was only a one-off, and it was my pleasure and a privilege to speak to you all as one of you. And I'm a bit uncomfortable with the expert stance even. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to be back again today. So thank you so much. This is really kind, and I'm very embarrassed. So thank you very much, and that's all I'll say on it.
Thank you. Don't be embarrassed. Now, unusually, this first category, there is normally only one winner, but there was another exceptional contribution earlier this year. And again, we're quite lucky that the other winner we have with us is Professor Peter Ray. This was Professor Ray has been a fabulous supporter of the group ever since we started in 2018. And I would say we couldn't have been as effective as we have without his help over the years. But this year, he pulled together a presentation that he gave in June, a meeting in June. And it was not only my opinion, but almost everyone who's watched the video since then. The presentation was the best single piece of content we've ever seen that ran through the most common balance conditions, the causes, the treatment, and it was a real tour de force of balance conditions. And the fact Professor A pulled this all together for us was fabulous. And I can now tell you that many new members go to that content the very first thing they do, and within days I'll receive emails saying how amazing that content has been in changing their lives so quickly. So thank you, Professor Ray, for all you've done, and especially for that content this year.
Well,
so well done. And there is another Dizzy coming your way.
Well, I do thank you, Kevin. That's incredibly kind of you, and I don't know if the screen's showing or not, but I do also have my previous award, so I'll have them both next to each other. But actually, it's been a very interesting year of reflection. As Kevin kindly said, I was elected the president of the Royal Society of Medicine section of otology, so that's the ear surgeons this year, which is probably the biggest honour I can be given as a surgeon in the UK. And one of the things you have to do as president is give an hour's lecture, but not an hour's lecture about medicine, but an hour's lecture about yourself and the great and the good, and my family, and teachers from 30 plus years ago turned up to the talk. And the theme of the talk, I'm actually going to give you a few slides on in the short talk I'm going to give you after this. And the theme was, I hear, therefore I am. So obviously a play on I think, therefore I am. And just reflecting on what was important in my career and what got me to where I got to, I discussed with patients, and one, I don't know if the patients are actually watching at the moment. If you are, really good to see you. Came up with a phrase that there's their company's motto, which is good people know good people. And actually this really resonated with me, and I put this as a core theme in my lecture. And the reason I'm saying this now, as this award isn't for me, and it's very kind of you to give it to me, Kevin, and Life on the Level, but actually it's an award for all of us, because having had this opportunity to reflect on my whole career and my life and what's gone on in it, I realized what I am is no more than the sum of what I've been taught. And I've been taught by, sure, hard work and, slogging till 2 a.m. every night for 30 years. But much more I've been taught by the amazing teachers and other doctors I've had during my career, and by the amazing patients that I've treated over the years. And every single patient I've seen, I've learned something from. And I hope that comes out in the talks and presentations that I give. And I'm reflecting not just medical science, but also the experience of our patients. And that's what this group is all about, with good people coming together to help each other. So good people know good people is the theme. And that's a really great motto. And congratulations to Kevin for bringing together this group of good people who are here to help each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Very good. Very good. So moving on to the next category, outstanding member contribution of the year. And this is for one of our own members who has done something that gives us hope, insight, or help, practical help. And it may be for just the members, or I say it may be beyond the group itself. And we love to recognise that contribution. And there was one major one this year, which unfortunately the winner can't be with us today. But the winner is Tracy Hudson. Some of the current members will recall Tracy joined last year. She's an expert in employment, UK employment and HR. She runs her own consultancy in this, but she also suffers with chronic balance problem, hence her joining the group. As many of you members will possibly personally be aware, there is far too much discrimination going on in the workplace when people go down with balance conditions. Unfortunately, great loyal long-term employees can find themselves being cast aside, possibly partly to do with the hidden nature of our conditions. You look so well, you can't possibly be ill. And the other common complaint by an employer is, I don't understand this. You were fine on Monday, and then you ring on Tuesday saying you can't walk. It's far easier if we break a leg and have it wrapped in plaster. Everybody gets it. So because of that, there has been a history of a lot of discrimination in the employment place. Tracy volunteered to work with us to tell us what we needed to know if we find ourselves in that position. And one interesting thing, I'll repeat it now for anyone who watches this, because most balance conditions do qualify as a hidden disability, you are protected, certainly in the UK, by very strong laws against discrimination against any form of disability. The difference that makes, if you are unfairly dismissed, if you lose your job unfairly, if the employer doesn't go through the correct policy, as well as going to a tribunal, the tribunal would normally be capped to a certain amount of money relevant to your salary. If they are found guilty of discriminating on the grounds of disability, there is no cap. That can cost an employer an awful lot of money. And we like everyone to know that, because we don't want people to lose their jobs and go to a tribunal. We want the employers to do the right thing and work with their employees. And you'll find Tracy's also created a web section for us that offers up this advice. She did a fabulous presentation in July. And beyond that, she's also now giving her own time on one-to-one consultations with our members who find they have a problem at work. So with all that, there was only going to be the one winner this year, and that's Tracy. So congratulations, Tracy. I don't believe she's on. If she is, speak up now. But as of yesterday, when I was trying to trick her to attend the meeting without telling her she'd won, she said she couldn't be with us. But well done, Tracy, and fabulous work you've done for the group and everyone else who has a balance problem that can see your content. So well done. Thank you. There was the picture of it. Oh, and I forgot to add, she did actually say this. She thought she was coming on today to talk about a little bit about what she does. So when she said she couldn't be with us, she did say, feel free to throw up a pic of me and tell everyone I'm friendly and lovely and happy to help. And that's typical of Tracy, how well she's worked with us. So next category, Best Balanced Friend of the Year, non-group member. Quite simply, that's a friend to one of our members, but they're not themselves a member. So that could be a partner, an employer, a doctor, anyone out there who's not a member of the group, but has done something to help that member. And I should add, with all these nominations, the judges, myself, one of them, we have to work through many nominations, and there's some brilliant nominations out there, but there can only be one winner. So it's sort of congratulations to many others who we know what you've been doing. We even know who you are through the nominations, but can only be one winner. And I hope that winner is with us today. We'll find out in a moment, because the winner is Emlyn Taylor, husband to Susie Taylor. Now, Rupal, can you see anyone out there waving or saying they're here? Susie or Emlyn? Are they on there?
Can't see them. Yes, here we go. I think there was a Susie here. Wait, hang on a second. Let me see if I can pin them. There we go.
Fabulous. Okay, so I will quickly work through this. The nomination was from Susie. We've edited this down a little, but I'll quickly run through some of what Susie told us. When Susie went down with her own balance problems, Emily was there. He researched, he found out about vestibular physio, drove her to the appointment, sat with her, helped her at home. He found life on the level. And got in touch with us to get Susie joined up. He sat with Susie when she first attended a meeting and was in a flood of tears, listening to the fact she was not alone and there were many others going through what she was going through. Emlyn's been a rock, encouraging her, pushing her to do things, but there to support when occasionally it was too much. He encourages Susie to be positive, reassures her, and the year's been really tough, but thanks to Emlyn, she's made the progress that she's made. So the judges, we felt it was a brilliant example, because it can be so difficult for partners. As we all know, anyone who has not personally experienced a dizzy condition, it's really hard to imagine how devastating it can be, how it really can affect every aspect of our life. So it was great to see a partner who responded, and we felt with the perfect balance, excuse the pun, between the encouragement, motivation and support. And it was a brilliant example of a best balanced friend that any of us could have. So I hope, if Emlyn is there, if he can say a few words. I don't know if you can see there, Rupal.
Yep, they're there. Hang on. He's just about to unmute.
You're dizzy.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Well done, Emlyn.
Thank you. I don't know what to say really. Just to say, I can understand, I think, how some of you must feel. I myself have muscular dystrophy, and I was diagnosed 10 years ago. Um, and I'm lucky in the respect that I've had an MRI that basically went down through my legs and showed where my muscles had turned to fat, basically, my hamstrings and stuff like that. And But for you guys, there's nothing visible, if you like, to say. They can't like take a scan of your brain and say, yeah, we can see what's wrong with you, we can help you, that kind of thing. Susie's always, like I said, I was diagnosed in 2013. She's always been there for me, and I just felt I had to do something for her, like she's done for me, and try and help her get through this, basically.
No, brilliant, very good, and worthy winner. This will be arriving around Christmas time for
Thank you.
Thanks very much for such a great example, and thanks, Susie, for the
Thank you.
nomination. Very
Thank you.
good. Thank
Thanks.
you. And the next category is Best Balanced Friend of the Year, who is a member. Now, a lot of you will know I'm a great advocate of what we call member-to-member contact, and that for the new members, it's where you can opt in to share your email address or email and phone number and get to meet lots of fellow members. The joy of this, today is brilliant and our expert panels are brilliant, but this is only 6 times a year. But with contact with fellow members, you can be talking to people every day if you want to, or once a week, and you'll be amazed, even with different balance conditions, how much you have in common. And the other thing, which I'm sure Dr. Ryan would explain, I just think it's miraculous. We gain so much from contact with other people, and especially those who get us, who they don't need to say, you look so well, and is it all in your mind? They know because they're going through what we're going through. So it's brilliant, and we do encourage this. And this award's fabulous because it's great to see that the group does work and bring people together, and people gain from it. So to announce the winner in this brilliant category is Amy Sparrow. And I don't know, Rupal, if you can see Amy's there. I wasn't sure whether Amy could attend.
Hi, I'm
you
here.
here?
Yes.
I've got a streaming cold, so I'm not going to
That's
turn
all
my
right.
camera on.
We can't catch it. We're fine.
Oh,
Now,
thank you
Amy,
so much.
older members will know of the group that Amy is a previous winner as well as outstanding member. But I'm just going to run through. The nomination is by her friend and fellow member, Ellie Spencer. And it was just wonderful to read this. And do remember there were many other nominations of what other members have been doing, which is brilliant. And Ellie said she's met Amy through the group. Amy's giving her lots of advice and information, always trying to help. She totally understands what Ellie's going through. And that first thing, Amy helped her to understand that she was not alone. They're both, Ellie and Amy, are studying at university. So this was a key part to where Amy could help. For example, helping Ellie get the disabled students allowance and a blue badge, other various things to apply for, and advice with coping with the university and the work that was required of her. Amy has given lots of encouragement, reassurance, and encouraged her not to give up with the vestibular rehab. It's also helped Ellie to accept the situation more than she had before, and that again was through the support, and helped Ellie to understand more about balance disorders, how to manage it. And of course, we knew this already. Amy is a very, very nice person. She does give up so much of her time, and really made great efforts to help Ellie. So, as Ellie said, she really thinks Amy deserves the award. So do we. What a brilliant example of support through that contact. And thank you, Amy. This is your second Dizzy, so that is an achievement in itself. But I wonder if I could ask you just to say a few words, please.
Thank you very much. I wasn't expecting it. It's been really nice emailing Ellie as well. Just, I think it's been helping me as much as it's helping her. You know, meeting someone else who's similar to me and being able to use some of my less than pleasant experiences to make something positive. Sorry if I'm not sounding very coherent. I've
No,
got
it's
a
been,
nasty cold at the moment.
uh,
But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
no, well, thank you, and what a great job you've done in helping Ellie. And now we get to the final category, best member's personal journey. And this one we love. This is about seeing people grow, get to a better place, whether that better place is the physical condition or with how we cope with it. And normally, we must be honest, this award is normally shared by that person, where it's very strange. We ask them to nominate themselves, which is really difficult for anyone to do. But it's so good to share these stories, to give sort of inspiration and hope to others. In this case, it will be a little bit of a surprise or shock, because this person has not nominated themselves. They have no idea this is coming. And the clue is the award that we've just seen, that we felt the award could only go to one person this year, and that was Ellie Spencer, who nominated Amy as best friend. So apologies for this, Ellie. We've tricked you into it. Ellie did say, when Ellie was aware Amy was winning the award, she said, please don't make me speak because I'm quite shy. So I don't know whether we'll encourage her on in a moment. We'll see. Maybe RuPaul can encourage her. But if I just explain, through Ellie's nomination of Amy, she revealed how much she'd gained this year, and this amazing ability to go forward into university and study despite her own challenges, was just amazing for us to see that growth and that growing in confidence, the practical help and the emotional support, and see Ellie make such good use of that. And in the judges' view, our view was what a key stage of Ellie's life for such a positive thing to happen. And that ability to go into university, and I'm sure thrive and prosper there, that will make such a change for the rest of her life. So it was just so wonderful to see that. And I know Ellie never intended to win any award, and would be far too modest, but through her nomination, she revealed her own journey, and we couldn't resist but to give her the Dizzy, this prestigious award. So, RuPaul, can you persuade Ellie? Is she there, and will she speak to us? RuPaul, you're on mute. Or maybe RuPaul's. I think RuPaul may be on a break. So, are you there, Ellie? Can you say hi?
Hello.
Hello. Apologies for that, but so well done for your journey. Can you tell us a little bit more about this year and university?
Well, I'm quite shocked about that. I didn't know that was going to happen. Yeah, I mean, it's been obviously like really difficult and everything, and I've tried to still carry on with university, even though it's been really hard. So I'm in my third year now and I'm doing fine art. And kind of like, I'm just I still want to do really well, even though because of this, I don't really know what else to say, but I just wanted to say thank you to Amy as well, because she has really, really helped me. So.
No, it's lovely, honestly. But thank you for sharing with us. And I say it's so good to hear of what you're doing, despite the condition. So, guys, that is it for another year on the Dizzies. Apologies for taking so long to run through it, but it is so important that we celebrate these people. Now, I don't know if we've still lost RuPaul. I don't know if you're there, RuPaul, your camera's off and your sound is off. But I think what I'll do, if I may, if you're there, Peter, could we ask you now to we're going into the second half and we're just going to now consider the future for balanced conditions. And Peter has prepared a small presentation. So over to you, Peter, if I can ask you to talk us through that, please.
Yep. Is that up okay, everyone? Can you see that?
That is it. Yep, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, this is very short, and it's just two brief stories, but I think they're quite impactful. And the first is quite technical, so you'll start to see how I think and some of the stuff we've done. And the second is a really wonderful Christmas story. I hope you're happy me sharing that with you. So, if you've got a big screen, this will be particularly difficult. Just have a look down that narrow corridor and imagine yourself walking down there. And this is me walking down there with my camera, with the wonky walls and the strange sounds. And this is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, which is a spectacular place to go. And it's an introduction to how vision impacts balance. And for those of you with persistent postural perceptual dizziness or vestibular migraine in particular, vision is really important in your experience of imbalance. So have a look at this visual illusion. Your eyes are telling you the cubes are going up and down, side to side, spinning round, and spinning round the other way. But those cubes aren't moving. Bigger and smaller? They're not. They're not changing size. So your eyes don't necessarily tell you the truth. And this was the play on my Royal Society of Medicine lecture that I mentioned just previously. I think, therefore I am. I hear, therefore I am. Or maybe I see, therefore I am. And you can see that the way our brain interprets visual stimuli, images coming into it, isn't necessarily all that it seems. Now, those of you with visual sensitivity or dominance who come in to my clinic, I will show you or get you to think about this very famous picture from Manhattan 100 years ago. I think it's 850 feet above the Manhattan pavement. It's a real picture. And I get you to imagine walking along a carpet normally, and that's not too bad. But then I get you to visualize it as you look down at this 850-foot drop, and my body starts tingling and tensing up. And those of you with visual preference will as well, because you're overly dominant on vision imbalance. So we wanted to start exploring this. And we thought about a condition called motion-induced blindness. And this is where the technical description is a perceptual awareness of a visual stimulus. You can see something. The way you see that object may change dependent upon the background. So when you're walking along a supermarket aisle, your perception of balance may change because of the motion of people or shelving around you. So we wanted to explore this experimentally. And this is a research project my son did, and he got awarded Young Scientist of the Year for this a couple of years ago. And I've asked him to come in to show his face, but he's too shy to do so this morning. But he knows I'm presenting this. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to stare at that flashing green and red spot in the middle of the screen. Now, if you've got a computer screen in front of you, this will work very well. If you've got an iPad, it may work. If you've got a phone, it may not work. But just keep staring at it. And do you see those yellow dots disappear? They come and go. Keep focusing on the green and red spot in the middle. They're disappearing for me. Now, of course, if you flick your eyes up, you'll see they're there the whole time. So do you see how your brain is tricking the visual part of your brain is tricking the conscious part of your brain? So although that visual stimulus is coming in, it's being altered internally. Now, we wondered, and this is the work we did with Montfort University, University of Leicester, Leicester Royal Infirmary, and John Hopkins over in the States. And in fact, those of you who come to the London Road Clinic, Oliver Ray, you'll see there as one of the authors. Oliver's finished university now, and he helps us out at the clinic sometimes whilst he's looking for a different job. So some of you may have met him down at the clinic, but this was his work. And we wondered, different people with different balance disorders might interpret visual stimuli differently. And here we are. Now, this is a very technical graph, and unless you've got a science background, it's not easy to read. But essentially what it's saying is that people with a balance disorder, BPPV, or vestibular migraine, see the dots coming and going much more frequently than people with migraine without a balance disorder and control groups who are normal groups. So there's something going on here. So people with balance disorders interpret vision slightly differently. But here's the stunning outcome from this study, that this is the visual vertigo analog scale. So the bigger the number, the closer you are to 100, the worse you are in a visual environment. And what we find is that patients with vestibular migraine causing dizziness, the higher their visual sensitivity, the more they're losing sight of those dots on the spinning wheel. In other words, their brain is interpreting visual stimuli increasingly differently. But even more amazingly, if you look at someone with BPPV, i.e. an ear problem, not a brain problem, the worse the visual sensitivity, the lower the movement. So what we're seeing is patients with vestibular migraine, and there's an overlap here perhaps with persistent postural perceptual dizziness, the more they experience visual sensitivity, the more difficult their brain finds it to handle motion in their environment. But patients with BPPV find that motion in the environment difficult, but their brains suppress that motion. So they do exactly the opposite thing. Now, this is just one tiny aspect of the research we're doing. And we've got lots we're doing in these groups of patients. We're recruiting at the moment to do brain monitoring, electrical waves in brains, to try and work out how your brain works when you're feeling dizzy in vision. And it's in different visual areas. And it's this type of work that we hope will lead to a better understanding and treatments for balance disorder. So I'm not offering you a cure with this, but I'm just trying to give you an example of the sort of thing that we're doing to help you with your chronic balance disorder. So the second quick one I wanted to do for you was I wanted to give you a Christmas story. Now, I've spoken to Bramwell this morning, and he's given me permission to share this story with you. Now, this is a picture of Bramwell 10 or 11 years ago at the age of 84. Now, you have to understand my father-in-law. He is one of the world's forces of nature. His great-grandfather was William Booth, who founded the Salvation Army. Bramwell is a Salvation Army officer and a great orator. He speaks like this to the world. Now, 10 years ago, he became progressively unsteady and very dizzy, particularly standing up. And we pushed to get him admitted for investigations. And just to be clear, that as a sensible doctor, I do not treat relatives. It's an unwise thing to do. So I always put that out to other people to do. But I will, of course, help my family as much as I can. And they found that his salt levels were very low. So they gave him salt replacement, and they put a heart pacemaker in because his heart wasn't beating quite properly, and they sent him home. Problem was, he continued to collapse. And he was told that he was old and frail and that there wasn't much that could be done about it. He lost consciousness a number of times. He had further outpatient appointments, and nothing seemed to be, we couldn't work out what it was. So at this point, I phoned a friend who was a care of the elderly doctor and a really sensible person. And like all good doctors, he went back through the medical records and he found a result from a number of months earlier that had initially been reviewed by a very junior doctor who hadn't understood the significance of the tests that he'd had when he was in hospital. And just to give you an idea of the complexity of some of the problems we're trying to sort out, the differential diagnosis lay between a condition called Addison's disease, which is where the adrenal gland, which sits in your abdomen, stops producing a hormone, or the pituitary gland, which sits in your brain, stops producing chemicals that are sent through the body. So very complicated and a very subtle test result. So the first thing this very sensible doctor did was to get a brain scan. Now, to you, this is just a brain scan. To me, this is a big tumor right in the middle of my father-in-law's brain. This is the nerve to his eyes, so he's beginning to lose vision from it. This is called the cavernous sinus. It's one of the areas where blood is drained for the brain, and this is being infiltrated by the tumor as well. This was 11 years ago, remember. Now, this could have been treated, in fact, via the nose to try and take this out, but this is the carotid artery, and there would have been a significant risk of instant death with surgery, and Bramwell elected not to have surgery. But his hormones were very, very low at that time. I got a phone call the next day from one of my colleagues who's an endocrinologist. That's a hormone doctor. He said, quick, come over and pick up some hydrocortisone, a steroid, for your father-in-law. And I said, well, shall I come tomorrow? No, come today, he said. So I dutifully went over, picked up some very cheap medicine called hydrocortisone, and on the Saturday, I gave my father-in-law the packet. Now, you've got to understand, my father-in-law was 84, couldn't get out of a chair. As he tried to stand up, he'd fall and break his nose, and he did all of that stuff. At 6 o'clock the next morning, there was a bang on our back door, and we crawled out of bed, and there he was. And he threw his arms in the air and said, I'm back. It's a miracle. And he was. He was completely transformed to the old, exhausting Bramwell we've always known. And here he is, 10 years later. This was this summer, at the age of 95, in our garden. He is 95. He's elderly now, but he's still had 10 years of happy life in our village. And being able to identify that diagnosis and have this miraculous cure was a huge emotional experience for us, but also, of course, a learning experience. And Bramwell asked me, being a great religious Christian man that he is, to send his best Christmas wishes to you, his understanding for what you're suffering, and his love to you all. And I think we learn from that dizziness can be really difficult to diagnose. It's not easy for doctors. You know, I was trying my best to oversee this, and I couldn't manage him myself. You know, I'm not allowed to, but I got the best people to see him who still struggled to make the diagnosis. And in episodic dizziness, we would hope to get a diagnosis in about 90% of our patients. So we have to have a degree of being humble about what we as physicians can actually achieve. But we also, as doctors, and this is what I work very hard to do, is to try and get doctors to network with each other and to learn from each other. And we also learn that if you can't get an answer, don't accept what's gone before. Go back to the beginning and start again and just try and think through everything. to see if we can get a diagnosis. Now, be clear, I'm sure none of you have got this. It's a rare condition, and I don't want you to go away with this image that there's a drug that's going to suddenly cure you. That's not what this talk's all about. But what I'm trying to say to you is that there are rare diagnoses out there, and there is hope for everyone. So that's my very short Christmas message of hope. I hope that was useful. There we are.
Super. Rupal, if we can quickly then do, there's some more general questions, because I know we are dramatically overrunning today. Possibly the fault of the disease. Are you there, Rupal?
I am. Hopefully you can hear
brilliant.
me. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so this is to all the panel. If you could change just one thing in the NHS that would help the most balanced sufferers in the UK, what would it be? Let's start off with Michaela.
Well, I was hoping you were going to go to Hannah and Peter then to give me ideas of what direction to go on that, because there's lots. I think probably the biggest thing I would like to change is that there's such low numbers of us to treat so many people. I wish there was more of us.
Yeah, and I think most of us would feel that way too if we've been waiting for a long time. Peter?
A balance centre in every region.
Hannah?
Yeah, it's quite a clear one for me. I think in general, you know, we all know the NHS is broken and needs so much more funding, more generally, but specifically when it comes to balance disorders, for me, it would be for those doctors and medics who are not experts in balance, who are not neuroetologists, for example, to have way more education and understanding about the common balance conditions, so that if you show up at A&E or you show up to your GP, you're not going to get gaslit. That's your new word of the day, Peter. You're not going to be dismissed or invalidated, or actually told that, you know, you're a bit crazy and it's all in your head. So for me, it would be for the doctors who are the gatekeepers to the specialists to not inflict trauma on people by invalidating them and delaying really important care, which is unfortunately happening really frequently. So that would be it for me.
Brilliant. Peter?
I've given you mine.
You have, haven't you? Bear with me. I've got another question coming up for you then. When it comes to AI, what is the likelihood that AI will be used in a positive way to help with any aspect of balanced condition treatments or therapies?
Oh, I mean, it's going to be. We set up a company called Balance Age, which is Balance Artificial Intelligence Diagnostics, with IBM and with the founder of the Semantic Web, which really is what founded Google. And it was a really exciting company, and we got funding for it, and we started developing it. We didn't make it as an AI startup, and this was before the recent wave of AI companies. And the aim was to try and get so much information into this model that patients could put their details into it, or even speak into it, and be triaged into an appropriate direction for balance treatment. You know, most startup companies don't succeed. We thought it was worth doing. We were well ahead of the pack, but we didn't succeed. Someone's going to. So I think the first area is going to be really helpful is in triage. And by triage, I mean saying, who is it you should be going to see? Should you be seeing an ENT surgeon, a neurologist, a cardiologist, a psychologist, whatever it is? And maybe when it gets more sophisticated, it'll help with diagnosis. And then the second area it's going to be helpful for probably is in vestibular physiotherapy. So I think we'll be able to get it. We're working on this, as are many other groups, I would add, on trying to get video goggles with AI incorporated to identify feedback from the eyes, for example, to see how we can improve vestibular physiotherapy. So it's all coming. I've no idea how long it's going to take to actually work, but there's a lot of us working on that.
Brilliant. If waiting times to access diagnosis or treatment are very long, what general advice can you give without knowing a person's condition for things to do or research practice in those periods at home waiting for treatment? Shall we talk to Hannah first?
Yes, although I'll probably be stepping outside of my area of expertise and referencing things that Michaela and Peter could probably reference. It depends. This depends on how much money you have and how much access you have to private physio and private consultations. If you don't, I would say Michaela can probably speak to some basic vestibular rehabilitation that you can find, for example, on YouTube, and maybe there's advice she can give about some recommended ones. And as Peter said, there are some really good evidence-based supplements, for example, for vestibular migraine that you can take that are you don't need a prescription for, so you can start doing that. And there are some natural lifestyle factors that we know are evidence-based for some of these conditions that you can find out about through support groups. So, for example, making sure that you're well hydrated, getting consistent sleep, managing your emotion regulation through breathing exercises that don't cost any money. So I would start with what you can control and what is accessible to you for free while you're waiting.
Michaela?
Yeah, I think Hannah's covered that really, very beautifully. I've got a couple of videos on YouTube. If you just Google Michaela Burton YouTube, I've got a couple of videos on there showing you how to do the VOR exercise, which is your kind of your start off exercise for many vestibular issues. There's also one on there about Epley maneuver and Brent Darragh exercises. But the key thing really is to not avoid things. The worst thing that you can do is shut yourself away in your home and keep as still and as inactive as you can. It doesn't do you any good mentally, it doesn't do you any good physically. And those things are really, really important to help you find out what's going on and get yourself the best care that you can and to start recovering. As I've said before, go out for walks, speak to people, try and communicate, let people know what's going on, because sometimes you'll be amazed at who can give you the advice of, oh, my mother or my father had something similar and they found someone really helpful. Communicate.
Yeah, and tell them about the group as well,
Yeah,
Peter.
absolutely.
It can be a really frustrating time while people are waiting because they don't exactly know what's going on, you know, and they're desperate to see somebody like yourself to get a proper diagnosis and get some proper help. What would be your advice?
Well, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We had this conversation yesterday. If anyone was listening to VIDA, the American Balance Association that Kevin introduced us to, so I had a conversation between here and the USA yesterday evening, and as a doctor, clinician, I always want a diagnosis. And that's my difficulty with interim advice, because you don't actually know what you're treating, and that can be a challenge. Although the advice you've been given by Michaela and Hannah is absolutely spot on. You know, a lot of people are coming to see us privately now. The great majority of my patients pay themselves. And if you are able to, don't suffer in silence and find the right person near you. Make sure you research that person and go to the right person near you to try and help you. And if you can't, it's really as much a matter of pushing a GP to try and get you a referral to the right person in the NHS, irrespective of how long that might be, and keeping a healthy lifestyle, eating well, trying to get some exercise. We've lost you. Rupal, you've gone again.
You're on mute, Rupal.
I'm not sure why I keep doing that. My apologies. Okay, I'm going to stay with you, Peter, for this one first. Top 3 tips then for having the best Christmas with a balanced condition. I know we've kind of touched on lots of different aspects at the beginning, but top 3 for you, Peter.
I mean, you're allowed to enjoy it. Avoid the migraine triggers, so chocolate, cheese, Chinese food, and so on, and make sure you get plenty of sleep and exercise.
Hannah?
Reduce expectations and unpick what might be underneath some of those expectations. Just give yourself permission to take breaks, to take some space away. And number 2 would be focusing on what's within your control. So things like if you have migraine glasses, if you can bring along some of your own food, if you can offer to bring a dessert that's kind of migraine friendly, for example, if you've got vestibular migraine, that kind of thing would be really helpful. And don't beat yourself up too much if you end up having, to counterbalance some of those points. If you do end up having that glass of wine or you do end up having that chocolate, please don't go into overload beating yourself up about it. You're human, you're celebrating, you can always pull back the next day.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add, Michaela?
again, pace yourself, spread things out if you can. It's okay to set boundaries, to say, this is what I'm able to do, and that's all I'm able to do and all I'm going to do. That's perfectly okay. And to just enjoy what you can. It's one day of the year, and it doesn't have to be the most spectacular craziness of doing everything with everyone. Enjoy it in the way that you enjoy it, and spend that time with those that you love in the way that works for you and for them as best as you can.
If you were going to suggest or recommend a New Year's resolution, Michaela, as something to aim to do or achieve through 2024 that would help people with a balanced condition, all our members, what would that be?
It would probably actually be to be aware and to learn to treat yourself in the way that you treat others, with that same kindness, that same kind of expectation level of, you're human, you're going to make mistakes, there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days, and that's okay. And be kind to yourself.
Love it. Hannah?
It's a really interesting question. I really like reframing New Year's resolutions away from goals towards kind of values. I love what Michaela said there as well. And I think if we can connect in with our values as people with vestibular conditions, that can be really helpful because, for example, if you love connecting with nature, that's something you can do regardless of how unwell you are a lot of the time. If you want to kind of be closer to your friendships, that's something you can work towards nurturing, but in quite a gentle way, rather than saying, I want to lose 2 stone by, March, or I want to have achieved XYZ by September, which is a little bit more self-punishing. So I would say goals that are, quite gentle, or connecting in with your values, so that you can kind of learn to build a rich and meaningful life alongside your condition and find some pockets of joy, even though you have this condition that's incredibly difficult to live with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter?
Yeah, and I think reflect Hannah and Michaela's view. It's very difficult setting a goal because it can lead to a goal not achieved, which is a setback. And I think I would just think about what you want from life and what would be a nice thing to do. It might be something as simple as a holiday, and the holiday doesn't have to be as spectacular as Mr. Higgs' holiday. It may just be a trip to a country house or to the beach, and just think about how you're going to get there. You're going to wear sound cancelling headphones, a blindfold, some travel tablets just to get you there in the journey, and just to have the opportunity to have maybe some sea air, walking along the beach. Just have a goal to go to, but make it a gentle goal and one that is malleable, so you don't have to fix and fail to get something where you can certainly succeed at.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for your advice and the presentation as well. I think it's been invaluable. There's lots of links on the chat as well. Hannah's just posted a video on setting gentle goals as well for people with disabilities. These are all really, really useful. And Kevin, no doubt we'll send out these links when we send out the information to this video for other people.
We will. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rupal. Another brilliant job done. Thank you, panelists. Yeah, we really couldn't do this without you. Your contributions have been fabulous. Thanks to all the members. Thank you to all those dizzy winners this year. What brilliant, brilliant work you've done in deserving it. And we come to the end of another year. Can't believe how quickly they go. But as Peter was saying, it's just such a pleasure and honour for all of us to be part of this, to be seeing such good things happening and coming from it. So we wish you all a brilliant Christmas break. My final message is, if you're not opting already for the member-to-member network, do consider it. That's where you share your email or your phone number with other members who have opted in. We're not back until February. but you could be having lots of brilliant conversations, making new friends with people just like you. Email me, and there's going to be a new list published next week. So do try and get your emails in. But thank you, Hannah, Peter, Michaela, Rupal. Thanks all of you for joining. Apologies we ran on so long today. There's always so much to say. But all of you have a fabulous Christmas. We hope for a better, more balanced 2024, and we'll see you then. Thank you all.
Merry
Thanks very much.
Christmas,
Bye, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
so
Merry
much.
Christmas.
Happy holidays,
Bye-bye.
everyone.